Hello, dear friends. My name is Vasyl Pekhno. I'm a Ukrainian journalist, and I invite all of you to watch this latest update on Ukrainian battle map situation. This is the fresh update as of August the 21st. So please join and watch this video, like it, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and leave your comments just below the video. Let's begin.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Let's start with Dobropilya. The English-British publication BBC writes about the achievements, the great achievements of Ukrainian forces in the Dobropilya area. The BBC is adding a bit of pomp in favor of our troops. Supposedly, Ukrainian forces in the Nikhanorivka area have cut off the salient of the occupiers advancing toward Dobropilya so much that now the Russian troops are almost threatened with encirclement in Donbas. I'll say this, that's a rather premature opinion, so to speak. I don't share such triumphant sentiments regarding the counteroffensive actions of our units in the Dobropilya direction, because right now we can't say that the Russians are completely encircled there or that their situation is almost critical. The situation is simply unfavorable for them. That's a fact. The situation is unfavorable. It's a situation that ended up being an adventure for them. An adventure, or rather, that simply ended, well, in fact, with the destruction of a large enemy group. However, the enemy still remains in Kuchuriv Yar, and although they are cut off from the main forces, they are still here and trying to survive the enemy forces. And the enemy definitely hasn't stopped in the slightest when it comes to continuing to put pressure on our troops. It is very, very important and very difficult for our troops. It's crucial to understand that it is extremely hard for them to operate against enemy UAV operators. The elite drone group Rubicon, which is a kind of special forces unit of the Russian army, is really raging here, cutting off all logistics. They are now trying to improve the situation here. Therefore, I will repeat myself. I do not share this total victory optimism regarding what is happening near Dobropilya. There is positive momentum, there is a positive trend, and the situation has been relatively stabilized. Corps-level command systems are now showing themselves, because, as is known, the first corps of the National Guard Azov has entered the Dobropilya direction. In the direction of Pokrovsk itself, the 7th Corps of the Air Assault Forces is operating, consisting of at least 3 brigades, the 82nd, the 79th, and the 25th Airborne Brigade. I have spoken about this. I want to emphasize that the core system is starting to prove itself and demonstrate its advantages. But we are not just far from ideal, we are still far from even having it function properly. Because even in reality, if we look at this section near Zolotai Kolodiaz, Kucheriavye Yar, let's say this breakthrough in the direction of Dobropilya. I'll repeat once more, who is operating here? This is the first corps of the National Guard of Ukraine, Azov. People who aren't very familiar with this terminology think that it was the Azov Brigade that entered and stabilized the situation. No, it's the Azov Headquarters Command with subordinate units that directly belong to this corps. This is the Chervona Kalina Brigade, which was here and continues to operate here. So, in fact, only one brigade from this corps set of troops is directly operating in the Azov direction, in the Dobropilya direction, because the Azov Brigade itself was and has been operating in the Toretsk direction. As I understand it, it will continue to operate further, particularly here in the area of Katerynivka. Yesterday, a video appeared on Azov's social media saying that they had repelled an enemy assault on Katerynivka, not allowing them to gain a foothold there because enemy infantry supported by armored vehicles tried to land and establish themselves in Katerynivka. However, the brigade's fighters were waiting for them there, not the corps, but already the Azov Brigade here on the Toretsk direction in the Katerynivka area. Perhaps partially Azov, one part is here on the Toretsk direction, another in Dobropilya, but overall the Azov Corps as such is scattered. That is, we can't say that the reform of the corps system has already taken place. It is showing its positive results, primarily in terms of management, and it was all started and done precisely for the purpose of improving management. And now I'll repeat once more on the Pokrovsk and Dobropilya axis, these signs of corps-level management are indeed bearing certain fruits. Overall, here on the Kostyantynivka axis, it's worth noting that the enemy is pressing just as they are on Chasiv Yar, still unable to break it or its resistance, and the enemy continues to put pressure on Stupochki and Prichetina as well. Here, along the road from Bakhmut towards Kostyantynivka, the advance consists of Russians running into the basements in the direction of Stupochki. You can see quite a wide gray zone here. They run into the first houses of Stupochki, then they are driven out, and then it all repeats according to the usual pattern, constantly over and over again. If enemy groups are not destroyed in time, breakthroughs can occur, like we saw near Dobropilya. extremely difficult, if not already starting to say, well, okay, it's not critical, because there aren't any operational strategic circumstances there. But overall, the situation is extremely tense, and right now it's developing on the Lyman front. The Lyman front is everything that's here in this area. First and foremost, it's the Serebryansky forestry in this region. The second target to pay attention to right now is Yampil, a settlement, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe even a small town, and Yampil in Donetsk region on this Lyman, on the Lyman front direction, because we actually have more than one Yampil, let's put it that way. Yampil in Vinnytsia is definitely a city, but Yampil here near Lyman is most likely a settlement. But still, that's not really the point. But Yampil itself, this particular settlement, is quite a significant point for both our defense and the enemy's ambitions. And it was precisely here that yesterday the deep state analysts resumed their YouTube activity. They posted a recording of such operational map updates on their YouTube channel, and they specifically noted that currently in some places enemy groups are being spotted from the direction of the Serebryansky forestry already on the roads leading to Yampil. In addition, Yampil and the road connecting Zarechne and Yampil are also threatened by the enemy's advance from the direction of Torske and Zarechne from the left bank of the Zherebets River. That is, in the near future, the enemy will aim to try to encircle the settlement of Yampil precisely with a northern pincer, using a northern overhang and pressure directly from the east. In the same way, the enemy is also threatening Serebryanka due to the recent advances that have taken place in the Serebryansky forestry area. The same deep state analysts emphasize, not blaming, by the way, the territorial defense units, but they do point out that these advances are happening in no small part because there are territorial defense units here that are simply unable to hold back this enemy offensive. And it's not the territorial defense unit's fault. It's just that at some point we started to more actively rearm, let's say, the territorial defense units, trying to turn them into heavy mechanized brigades. But in reality, some of our territorial defense units still remain, unfortunately, something like a suitcase without a handle. And this is exactly what Deep State talked about yesterday, commenting on the situation in the Serebryansky forestry, that the territorial defense forces are unable in such head-on battles to hold back an enemy that significantly and overwhelmingly outnumbers our troops. And this is exactly what we're observing in the Serebryansky forestry. Now the enemy will be pushing towards Yampil. I'll repeat once again, there are already some enemy groups present here in certain areas. In addition, it's worth noting the extremely difficult situation in this area. This is Zarechne and Torske. Zarechne and Torske are two villages located on the left and right banks of the Zherebets River. Accordingly, in Torske, you can see a rather wide gray zone, which will most likely soon be marked in red, and may even extend to the other bank towards Zarechne, because in Zarechne, on the right bank of the Zherebets River, enemy infantry is consistently appearing, and this stability can even be observed in a video from the 63rd Mechanized Brigade, which is holding the defense here. This is their video content from yesterday, which appeared on the official page of the 63rd Steel Lions Brigade. What can be seen? You can see our tank driving into Zarechne and simply destroying the houses where the Russian occupiers tried to entrench themselves. Accordingly, these hideouts of Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups are being detected, and the tank just squeezes between enemy positions and destroys them. A tank is a terrifying force, but the very fact is that the occupiers are already on the right bank of Zarechne. This is a specific shelling. It happened to the south of the village, somewhere, approximately among the houses at this point, if you geolocate more precisely. So the enemy is making their way in here as well. Accordingly, the overall situation in Lyman is now significantly complicated. Although not long ago, the commander of the 3rd Army Corps, Andriy Beletsky, said that the enemy's advance on the Lyman-Kupiansk axis had been stopped. In a broader sense, one could talk about a halt. In such tactical advances, the enemy sometimes makes these moves, in particular those that pose a threat to the Lyman direction. Exactly the same situation in terms of tactical movements is expected soon and in the future in the Zaporizhzhia region. That is, as I mentioned yesterday, right now the enemy is most active in the area of Kamyanska. They, through Plavny, are now pushing toward Stepnohirsk, trying to reach it. Previously, they used to reach Stepnohirsk directly across the steppe, from where they were driven out by the fighters of the 80th Assault Regiment. Now they're coming through Plavny. So there is increased activity here. Undoubtedly, there will be attempts to try to encircle Kharkiv, but again, not head-on, but to try to somehow cut off its logistics, that is to advance to FPV drone firing range, and in this way simply cut the one road that leads to Kharkiv. doing something similar to what the Russians did with Sudzha in Sumy and Kursk regions at the beginning of this year. And Huliaipole, well, I think that soon we'll be hearing a bit more news about Huliaipole, what real enemy forces are present here, what their actual plans are. As of now, I personally see threats at the junction of Donetsk and Zaporizhzhia regions, where the enemy has made some advances. But even on these arrows on the deep state map from the area of Timirivka, we can see the general movement of the Russians toward the Novopavlivka direction, in the area of Malivka, where they are pushing forward, in the area of Alexandropol, where they are advancing with the aim of trying to create a front along the Vorona River, which flows here. Right now, the Russians are trying to advance from Zaporizhzhia toward Dnipropetrovsk region along this route. We, in turn, in Zaporizhzhia, understanding all the dangers that the Russians are preparing certain preparatory actions for offensive operations, are destroying everything we can. Rail cars. Yesterday, a great video appeared from the separate special purpose unit Lazar. This is the 27th Brigade of the National Guard. This is an extremely top-tier and effective Lazar unit, which demonstrated the destruction of not just anything, but the enemy's air defense system. An S-300V surface-to-air missile system worth 40 million euros. It was destroyed by bombs dropped from a bomber guided by an aircraft-type UAV. Here we can see that the S-300V SAM system was detected along with its trailer and the vehicle transporting it, heavy automotive equipment, in other words, basically a flatbed truck, right? And on this anti-aircraft missile system, a strike is carried out and it is completely destroyed. Oh, just look at that. How satisfying. Wow. There have been a ton of such strikes, this so-called PPO side, as it's been dubbed, in the Zaporizhzhia region over the past 6 months. Just a ton. And this opens up corridors for our drones to fly in, for our deep strike systems to operate. This is exactly the kind of work we're seeing, particularly from the Lazar group of the Special Forces unit of the 27th Brigade of the National Guard, which took out an S-300 in the Zaporizhzhia region. You can even watch this beauty from different angles. Where did this happen? Here, the scouts detected it and marked the target. This happened in the Zaporizhzhia region near the settlement of Oleksivka, which is temporarily occupied, about 40 kilometers from the front line. So it's quite deep, quite far behind enemy lines, which, let's say, can't help but make us happy. In the north and the south, that is in Kherson region, notice how quickly all the panic about Kherson passed, about how the Russians were supposedly going to carry out a landing operation, as a result of them striking the bridges in the Korabel district. There were such expectations that it was all over, chaos, panic, something terrible. Now there will be Krinky 2.0. This panic did not materialize because the response was clear. The Russians would try to demonstrate their activity there, but in the end, it would all end in fiasco because they don't have enough troops to exert real pressure. And in general, it's almost impossible to imagine anyone trying to cross the Dnipro River under current drone warfare conditions. So, regarding Kherson, apart from the shelling, these threats are essentially off the table. As for Sumy, the threats are significant, but for now, they are also being lifted. Except, I repeat once again, for the shelling. There is also a somewhat positive trend for our troops in the Kharkiv region. In the area of Kupiansk and Zarechne, although the Russians have reached some dangerous lines, they have not been able to develop their success, or, so to speak, bring it to fruition, thank God. Right now, the most difficult areas, and this is clearly visible from the General Staff's reports, are 3 points: the Pokrovsk, Novopavlivka, and Lyman fronts. These 3 points are currently experiencing the greatest, let's say, crisis of active combat operations that we are witnessing. In the near future, for now, by the way, even the deep state analysts themselves have stated that so far they are not observing any significant movements of enemy troops in the Zaporizhzhia area, on the Zaporizhzhia front, Huliaipole, Kharkiv, or Kamianske. Nowhere are they recording such significant, large, or intense movements, but this could happen in the near future. However, let's also not overly twist these into some kind of panic-driven expectations, because that's exactly what Russian war correspondents are hoping for. I've read a few of them, and they say something like, oh, just wait, we're about to start. Now, there will be a phase of offensive active combat operations like never before, something you couldn't even imagine. But actually, we can imagine all the enemy's offensive capabilities. You know, they waste their personnel in an incredibly stupid way, incredibly so. And honestly, this is actually our huge advantage. They don't value their personnel at all, because if they did, our set of problems would be just on an unbelievable scale. But instead, they throw unprepared soldiers into battle, and it all ends in fiasco for them. Only thanks to sheer numbers do they still have the ability to advance for now. Well, let's put a period on that. Thank you, friends, for your attention. Take care of yourselves. All the best, and until we meet again.